Two ice cream shop owners hate each other until a Miami heat wave forces them to team up, and sparks fly. Who will win the sweetest battle? The first day of summer felt like a promise and a challenge all at once. Sun blazing, palm trees swaying, the whole city humming with tourists and locals desperate for cold treats, and me, standing behind the counter of scoops and smiles, ready to defend my territory like a queen defending her castle. The problem wasn't just the heat, it was him. The tall, annoyingly charming owner of Chill and Thrill, the shop across the street. Ever since he opened last summer, he'd been trying to steal my customers with neon signs, crazy flavor experiments, and that infuriating grin that made people think his mint choco chip was somehow superior to my classic caramel swirl. I was scooping the first batch of mango passion fruit sorbet, trying to ignore the blaring heat, when I saw him leaning against his counter, watching me with mock seriousness. "Selling happiness again?" he called across the street, voice loud enough for half the pedestrians to hear. I narrowed my eyes. "Better than selling disappointment," I shouted back, waving my spatula like a sword. He laughed, the kind of laugh that made you want to punch someone and smile at the same time. "You think people come here for sorbet? Please, they come for me." I scoffed, but inwardly I bristled. People always underestimated me because I smiled too much behind the counter, but I wasn't just some friendly face. I was the queen of flavors in this block, the champion of chill in Miami, and no one was going to outscoop me. The first customers of the day were families, kids sticky from melted ice cream, and parents swaying in the heat, searching for something sweet. I handed out scoops like a magician, each one dripping with the perfect balance of flavor and fun. Kids' faces lit up, parents sighed relief. And across the street, I saw him frown, probably recalculating his game plan. It wasn't just business, it was pride. And the rivalry? It was deliciously tense, like chocolate fudge in the summer sun. Every glance across the street, every sly grin, every exaggerated wave, it was a dance. One I hated to admit I was kind of enjoying. By noon, the sidewalks were swarming. Tourists snapping pictures, locals escaping the heat, everyone moving like bees toward sugar and cold. He shouted something about his limited edition sea salt caramel swirl, and I countered with a new batch of passion fruit mango fudge ripple. Customers hovered, deciding, torn, sweating, and secretly thrilled by the spectacle of two stubborn ice cream shop owners battling it out like gladiators with sprinkles. When a little girl walked up, holding her mom's hand, I leaned over the counter. "Mango passion fruit today, princess. Sweet and sunny, just like Miami." She squealed, nodding enthusiastically. Across the street, I caught him frowning as she skipped toward my counter, cone in hand. Victory never tasted so sweet. The day had only just begun, but I already felt the thrill of summer, the sun baking the streets, and the rivalry heating up faster than any waffle cone. And I knew this summer wasn't going to be just about ice cream. Somehow, somewhere, it was going to be about him too. Who do you think will win the summer ice cream rivalry? Her or the rival across the street? By mid-afternoon, the sun was a golden beast overhead, baking the sidewalks and making the city shimmer like a mirage. Tourists fanned themselves, locals wiped sweat from their brows, and I was still scooping, juggling cones, cups, and smiles, all while keeping one eye on him across the street. He had a new tactic today, a huge chalkboard sign outside Chill and Thrill, bright letters screaming, "Tropical Explosion, one day only." People were already crowding around it, pointing, snapping pictures, whispering to each other. I clenched my spatula tighter. Not to be outdone, I whipped out my secret weapon, a freshly made batch of coconut lime swirl topped with golden caramel drizzle. I set it in the display, stepped back, and watched customers' faces light up. Sweet, tangy, irresistible. I caught a guy glancing between our counters, torn like a kid in a candy store. Yes, that's right. That's how it's done. Then I saw him striding toward the street, a large scoop in his hand. He leaned over his counter, flashing that infuriating grin at anyone who looked my way. "Try my new flavor," he called, voice full of mischief, guaranteed to beat anything they serve across the street. I rolled my eyes but couldn't hide the tiniest flare of curiosity. I mean, who really does that? Walk around in broad daylight, offering samples like a challenge, like it's some gladiator arena made of ice cream. But somehow it worked. The crowd laughed, some cheered, and my competitors were sneaking sips, eyes widening. I couldn't let him win. Not today, not this summer. I grabbed a small bowl, scooped a sample of my coconut lime swirl, and held it up like a banner. "Try mine," I called, voice carrying across the sidewalk, guaranteed to make your taste buds dance. For a second, time seemed to slow. Tourists, locals, and kids froze in indecision. Then they started drifting, some toward me, some toward him. I grinned, a little wickedly, knowing the fun had only just begun. "Not bad," he said, leaning closer to the street. "But do you see this?" He held up a cone with layers of sea salt caramel, mango ribbon, and a sprinkle of toasted coconut. A flavor fusion masterpiece. "Your little swirl is cute, but it doesn't sing, sweetheart." I nearly dropped the spatula. Did he just call me sweetheart? Across the street? In front of everyone? I narrowed my eyes, feeling my face heat up faster than the summer pavement. "Cute?" I called back. "I'd call it legendary." The little kids around us squealed, pointing and laughing, sensing the playful war between us. Even some adults leaned in, watching, sipping, smiling at the spectacle. For a split second, I couldn't deny it. This rivalry was electric, fun, infuriating, and maybe a little thrilling. And as I caught his eye again, a spark of something unexpected flickered between us. A dare, a tease, a challenge. Heatwave or not, it was the kind of tension that could melt more than just ice cream. I smiled, tight-lipped. This summer was going to be unforgettable, and somehow I had a feeling that our rivalry was only the beginning. Do you think their rivalry will stay just about ice cream, or is something else starting to melt between them? By the third day, the Miami sun had gone full-on villain. Streets shimmered like molten glass, tourists collapsed into every shaded spot, and locals were dripping sweat faster than their drinks could melt. The heat wave had everyone begging for ice cream, which should have been good for business. Except, it wasn't. Customers were confused, indecisive, fleeing from the scorching sidewalks. Foot traffic slowed. Scoops piled up in my freezer, melting slightly, waiting for eager hands that never came. Across the street, I could see him muttering to himself, wiping sweat off his forehead, brow furrowed in frustration. The perfectly groomed neon sign of chill and thrill looked ridiculous under the blazing sun. I groaned, leaning against the counter, the spatula heavy in my hand. "This heat is unfair," I muttered. From across the street, I saw him glance over, expression hardening as if he'd read my mind. Then he did the unthinkable. He raised his hand, gesturing for me to come over. My first instinct, run. He's my rival. But the second, curiosity. Maybe desperation makes strange things possible. I wiped my hands, stepped out into the shimmering street, and walked toward him, the heat pressing against my skin like a heavy blanket. "We can't keep losing customers like this," he said bluntly, squinting at me under the sun. "Maybe we should, I don't know, work together, just for today." I blinked, thinking I misheard. Work together? With him? The man who practically stole my ideas every summer? The one whose grin made my blood boil and my brain short-circuit? "You mean, combine our efforts?" I asked, cautious. "Yes," he said, pointing toward the line of tired fanning customers. "Mix flavors, offer samples, make this heat wave fun instead of miserable. People want cold, fast, and memorable. We can't do it separately. They'll leave." I hesitated. My pride warred with practicality. I didn't want to admit it, but he had a point. People were melting out there, figuratively and literally, and we could either let the heat beat us or maybe, just maybe, try something ridiculous. "Fine," I said finally, tossing the spatula into the nearest bucket, "but only because I'm slightly masochistic, and partly because I don't want to see our customers suffer." He smirked. "Good choice. Let's brainstorm." We set up a little joint table between our shops, pulled out extra cones and bowls, and started mixing flavors, tossing sprinkles, testing combinations. Coconut lime swirl with chocolate fudge? Surprisingly amazing. Sea salt caramel with passion fruit? People stopped mid-step to try it, faces lighting up instantly. And then there was him, standing too close, handing me a spoon with a tiny sample, his fingers brushing mine for the briefest second. A spark, a jolt. My brain scrambled. "Focus," I told myself. "It's teamwork, nothing else." But when he laughed at a customer's overly dramatic reaction to our ice cream fusion, it was magnetic, pulling me in despite my best intentions. I caught myself smiling, unashamed, in a way that felt entirely new. By the end of the afternoon, the heat wave had brought more than melted ice cream. It had forced a truce, forced cooperation, and maybe, just maybe, forced a realization that rivalry could taste sweet in ways neither of us expected. Do you think they'll manage to work together smoothly, or will the rivalry get in the way of teamwork? By the next morning, we had a plan. Sort of. The heat wave had softened our egos just enough to try something ambitious. A joint ice cream tasting booth right in the middle of the street. People could mix flavors from both shops, sample new creations, and maybe forget for a minute that the sun was trying to fry their brains. I should have known it wouldn't be simple. First, there was the setup. He insisted on arranging the cones in a perfect gradient from light to dark, which looked absurd next to my messy, artfully swirled display. I muttered something under my breath about obsessive perfectionism, and he shot me a grin that was somehow both irritating and charming. "Art is important," he said, leaning a little too close while holding a tray. Our hands brushed. I yelped and jerked away. My heart thudded like a drum in a parade. Ridiculous. Focus on the customers, I told myself. Next, the tasting itself. Kids were screaming, tourists were snapping selfies, and both of us were juggling spoons, cones, and tiny bowls like circus performers. The first attempt at a combined flavor ended disastrously. Sea salt caramel plus mango passion fruit sorbet? Somehow the flavors didn't harmonize. One girl made a face that was half delight, half horror. The boy next to her sneezed from the powdered sugar sprinkle. We both stared, then burst out laughing. His laugh was warm, infectious, impossible to ignore. I realized for the first time that our rivalry could be fun, playful, even flirtatious. "You're laughing," he said, eyes sparkling. "Admit it. You're enjoying this." "I'm not enjoying this," I protested, though my cheeks burned, and I had to bite the inside of my lip to stop myself from smiling. "I'm just professionally observing." He leaned closer again, pointing at a cone he was holding, fingers brushing mine once more. That spark, tiny but undeniable, zipped through me. I shivered, a mix of heat, nerves, and something I didn't want to name yet. By noon, the chaos turned to rhythm. We were improvising flavors on the fly, teasing each other about which combinations would fail spectacularly and which might become legendary. Coconut lime with a hint of chocolate fudge? Surprisingly delicious. Caramel drizzle over passion fruit sorbet? People cheered. Each laugh, each accidental touch, each playful argument felt electric. The sun continued to scorch the streets, but somehow the tension between us burned hotter. I caught myself stealing glances at him when he wasn't looking, noticing the way his hair stuck to his forehead from the heat, the mischievous glint in his eyes whenever he scored a compliment from a customer. By the end of the day, we were exhausted, sticky, sunburned, and laughing until our sides hurt. The heat wave hadn't gone away, but somehow working together had turned chaos into something magical. And I realized, as we packed up the remaining scoops and melted cones, that maybe the rivalry wasn't the point anymore. Maybe it was the spark that had been hiding under all the competitive banter, waiting for a moment like this to finally melt through. Which do you think is more dangerous, hot sun or the sparks flying between them? By day 3 of the heat wave, we had an unspoken rhythm. Our teamwork was still messy, but it had a kind of charm that made customers linger longer than they would anywhere else. Every spilled scoop, every melted cone, every tiny accident turned into laughter, teasing, or the occasional brush of hands that made my chest flutter. It was mid-morning, and I was carefully drizzling caramel over a batch of passion fruit mango sorbet when he appeared beside me, holding a cone for sampling. Our elbows bumped, just lightly, but the spark it sent through me made me nearly drop the tray. "You okay?" he asked, eyes twinkling like he knew exactly what just happened. "Fine," I said quickly, turning my attention back to the cones, though I felt heat rising to my cheeks. Then a kid ran past, screaming about melting chocolate, and in the chaos, he grabbed my wrist to steady me. For a second, our eyes met, close enough to see the tiny flecks of ice cream on his hand. I swallowed hard, reminded again that he was annoyingly, impossibly magnetic. The customers were loving the collaborative flavors. People were snapping photos, giggling at the playful rivalry that had somehow turned into this flirtation, electricity, maybe even something like the beginning of trust. I never thought I'd see the day where we are working together, he said, grinning. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's ridiculously fun, but I also feel like I should be suspicious. I laughed, shaking my head. Suspicious? You're the one who suggested teaming up. I'm just here making sure we don't ruin everyone's taste buds with your crazy flavor experiments. He leaned in closer than necessary, resting his chin near my shoulder. Come on, admit it. You kind of like the chaos. You're smiling. I'm not smiling, I said, though my lips betrayed me. I kept drizzling caramel, pretending the tray required all my focus. The day went on, and small touches became frequent. Hands brushing over cones, leaning closer to scoop flavors simultaneously. Playful nudges when we disagreed about which combination would work. Every time my heart skipped. Every time the summer sun seemed to melt more than just ice cream. At one point, he leaned across the counter, picking up a sample and holding it to my lips. Taste it. Tell me it's not perfect. I leaned forward, brushing against his hand, and tasted it. Warm caramel, sweet passion fruit, a little tang from mango. Perfect. And my heart? Definitely not perfect, because it was racing. You've outdone yourself, I said, eyes flicking up to his. He smiled, that infuriating, gorgeous grin that made me want to argue and swoon at the same time. By the time we closed up that day, the heat wave had officially turned the city into a sticky, sweaty, but happy mess. And I realized something. This summer rivalry wasn't just about ice cream anymore. It was about sparks, tension, laughter, and maybe a hint of something dangerously sweet. Do you think they'll admit their attraction, or will the rivalry keep them teasing each other forever? By the weekend, Miami was alive in a way only summer could manage. The streets buzzed with tourists, music floated through the air, and the local beach festival promised enough sand, sun, and chaos to make anyone sweat. Naturally, we had been roped into it, our ice cream collaboration officially invited to set up a booth. I sighed as I carried our supplies across the sandy walkway. The heat was brutal, and my hair was sticking to my neck, but I couldn't help smiling, because beside me, hauling a cooler with way too much effort, was him, my infuriatingly charming rival-turned-partner. You realize this is basically a survival challenge, he said, shifting the cooler and brushing a strand of hair from his face. Sand, sun, screaming kids, we might actually melt before the ice cream does. I know, I said, laughing despite the sweat stinging my eyes. But at least we're in this together. His grin made my stomach twist. Together, huh? Dangerous word choice, he teased, nudging me lightly with his shoulder as we set up the booth. As the festival began, chaos descended immediately. Kids screamed, parents pointed, music thumped, and a parade of curious tourists made a beeline for our little table. The joint flavors were a hit: mango coconut swirl, passion fruit fudge ripple, caramel drizzle over every cone imaginable. People were taking photos, tagging our shops, raving about the ridiculous but perfect combinations. Between serving customers, we kept bumping into each other, reaching for the same spoon, brushing elbows, leaning close to check on a cone. Each time my pulse spiked. Each time his eyes caught mine, holding a mischievous glint that made it impossible to focus. At one point, he grabbed my hand mid-scoop, guiding it to sprinkle powdered sugar over a cone. Here, this will look better if you angle it like this, he said softly. My chest tightened, and I had to take a deep breath to stop from staring. Thanks, I muttered, trying to sound professional. Later, during a lull, we stole a few moments by the water's edge. He tossed me a beach ball, and I threw it back, deliberately missing half the time just to get him to chase me. Sand flew, laughter spilled, and for a moment it felt like the rivalry, the ice cream, the heat, none of it mattered. It was just us, sunburned and smiling, surrounded by the chaos of summer. You know, he said, brushing sand off my shoulder. I didn't expect to have this much fun with you. I mean, the chaos is great, but this is better. I felt my face warm in more ways than one. Fun doesn't even begin to cover it, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But it didn't matter. The way he smiled at me, that little playful tilt of his head, made the words unnecessary. As the festival wound down, our booth a complete success, I realized the rivalry had transformed. It had been replaced with something electric, something playful, something that might just turn into summer magic. And with him standing there, looking at me with that infuriatingly confident grin, I couldn't help but wonder. Maybe this summer, the sparks weren't just from the sun. Do you think they'll finally admit there's something more than rivalry between them at the festival? By Monday, the beach festival buzz hadn't faded. In fact, it had escalated. Somehow, photos of our joint ice cream booth had gone viral online. Locals tagging friends, tourists posting selfies, and people gushing about the craziest, most delicious flavor combinations in Miami. Our phones buzzed nonstop, notifications piling up faster than melting cones. I stared at my phone, eyes wide. We're trending, I whispered. He leaned over my shoulder, smirking. Truly terrifying, he said, brushing his hand against mine as he reached for the phone. That spark again, tiny, electric, making my chest flutter. Looks like the city loves our collaboration. Collaboration, I repeated, tasting the word, feeling its weight. Our rivalry had melted into something bigger, sweeter, and slightly dangerous. The day began like any other, a flood of customers desperate for a taste of our viral creations. I scooped, he scooped, and somehow, amidst the chaos, we managed to coordinate like a single, well-oiled ice cream machine. Our hands brushed constantly, shoulders bumped, and every accidental touch left me dizzy with anticipation. You're getting better at this, he said, leaning close to adjust a drizzle on a cone. His breath was warm against my ear. I might have to admit defeat soon. Not a chance, I whispered back, even as my hands shook just slightly. I'm holding my ground. We laughed. the sound blending with the excited chatter of our customers. And then a young couple approached, snapping photos, raving about our flavors. They asked if we'd collaborate on a full sundae, layers of caramel, passion fruit, coconut lime, and chocolate fudge. Why not? I said impulsively. Let's make something epic. We dove into it, tossing ice cream into bowls, drizzling sauces, sprinkling toppings, and tasting every combination. Our faces were close, almost touching, and for a second I forgot the world existed outside our shared chaos. You know, he murmured, brushing a stray strand of hair from my face. We make a good team. I froze, heart hammering. His eyes were locked on mine, warm, mischievous, and impossibly magnetic. Teamwork doesn't always mean ice cream, I said softly, teasing, though my voice trembled. He chuckled, leaning closer. Maybe it does, he whispered, or maybe it means more. My stomach flipped, and for the first time all summer, I wasn't thinking about flavors or customers. I was thinking about him, about the way his hand lingered near mine, about the way our laughter mingled, about the undeniable spark that had been hiding under rivalry and heat all along. The day ended with the final sundae handed to a delighted family, our hands brushing again as we gave it over. I looked at him, sunlight catching the corners of his smile, and realized that the viral fame, the heat wave, and the chaos had done more than boost business. They had pushed us closer than either of us expected. As we packed up, he leaned casually against the counter, eyes fixed on me. You know, he said, voice low, playful, teasing, magnetic. If this ice cream thing keeps going, we might have to consider making it permanent. I laughed, even as my heart thudded in my chest. Permanent, huh? Are you suggesting more than ice cream? He winked. Exactly that. And I realized for the first time that maybe rivalry had always been a cover for something sweeter, something warmer, something dangerous and delicious like summer itself. Do you think the sparks between them will turn into a summer romance? Or will their rivalry keep getting in the way? The morning after our viral success, I was exhausted but buzzing in that strange, overstimulated way that comes after too much sun, too much sugar, and too much laughter. I opened the shop to prepare for another busy day, expecting chaos, but not the emotional kind. He walked in, leaning casually against the doorway, that infuriating grin plastered on his face. Morning, he said, eyes twinkling. Ready for another round of mayhem? I rolled my eyes but smiled. As ready as I'll ever be. Though I might need a cold shower first. We set up for the day, scooping and serving, laughing at the chaos around us when suddenly he pulled me aside, his expression turning serious. Hey, I wanted to tell you something, he said, about why I opened my shop last summer. It wasn't just to compete. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, enlighten me. He hesitated, then sighed. I grew up in a small town. My dad ran an ice cream truck. It was his dream, but he never had the courage to expand, to take risks. I guess I'm trying to make up for that, to honor him. I blinked, taken aback. There was something vulnerable in his voice I hadn't heard before, something real. And suddenly, the rivalry, the teasing, the flirtation, it all made more sense. I didn't know, I said softly. That's actually really sweet. He shrugged, looking a little embarrassed. Yeah, well, enough of that. We've got ice cream to save before it melts. We dove back into work, but my heart lingered on his words. The playful chaos of our summer had layers I hadn't seen before. Layers of family, dreams, and maybe even fear of letting people close. Then disaster struck, or at least it felt like it. A text arrived from a customer praising him, and somehow the wording made it sound like he'd been secretly promoting his shop separately, taking all the credit for our viral success. My stomach dropped. I stormed over, heart racing. So, is this true? I demanded. Were you taking credit for this behind my back? He looked shocked, hurt flashing across his face. What? No. Where did you get that idea? I waved the phone in his face. This message, you didn't even mention me. His face softened, hurt melting into exasperation. I didn't need to mention you. Everyone saw both our names, and I swear I never... The words hung between us, tension rising hotter than the Miami sun outside. I felt frustration, embarrassment, and a strange pang of guilt at assuming the worst. Finally, he reached out, taking my hand gently. I'd never do that to you, he said softly. We built this together. Don't let a stupid text make you doubt that. I looked into his eyes, saw sincerity, warmth, and maybe even a hint of the same attraction that had been teasing us all summer. My cheeks heated, but this time it wasn't just from the sun. Okay, I whispered, squeezing his hand. I guess. I overreacted. He grinned, that infuriating, irresistible grin. Just a little, but now we know. We're stronger than a text. And somehow, in that moment, the rivalry, the sparks, the chaos, they all felt safe, promising, deliciously inevitable, like the perfect swirl of caramel and passion fruit. Do you think they'll fully trust each other now? Or could another misunderstanding ruin the summer romance? The next few days were different. The rivalry that had sparked our summer had softened into something warmer, gentler, but no less thrilling. Each glance, each brush of hands, each shared laugh carried a new weight. I felt it in my chest, a flutter that wouldn't stop, no matter how many cones I served. That morning, we opened early, preparing a special batch for the weekend rush. He leaned against the counter, sipping his iced coffee, watching me with that infuriatingly charming grin. You look serious, he said, voice teasing. Planning your next flavor attack? I smirked, pretending to ignore him. Someone has to make sure our coconut lime doesn't get outshone by your ridiculous caramel experiments. He laughed, and the sound wrapped around me, warm and familiar. Ridiculous? Never. Genius, maybe. But I like it when you tease me. The summer sun rose higher, melting the ice cream faster than we could serve it. But now with the rivalry softened, we worked seamlessly, scooping, drizzling, and tasting together. The chaos was fun, but there was a new rhythm, one that included brushing shoulders intentionally, leaning closer under the guise of reaching for a scoop, and lingering just a little too long in conversation with each customer. Around midday, a couple approached, asking if we had any secret flavors. I glanced at him, grinning. Only if you're brave enough to try them. He leaned close, whispering in my ear, "Want to mix one together?" His hand brushed mine and I shivered. "Absolutely," I murmured, hiding my racing heartbeat behind a playful grin. As we worked, I noticed how natural it felt. Our movements, our laughter, even the teasing comments. The sparks that had been teasing us all summer were now undeniable, flaring whenever our hands met or our eyes locked. Customers noticed too, stealing smiles, whispering, snapping photos. The summer heat didn't stand a chance against the warmth between us. Later, during a brief lull, we stepped outside for air. He handed me a small cone, grinning. "For surviving the chaos," he said. Our fingers brushed, lingering longer than necessary, and I felt a spark of something deeper. "I never thought summer could be like this," I admitted softly. "You make it fun, somehow." He looked at me, eyes softening. "You too, more than I expected, more than I should admit." The air between us was thick, electric, and full of possibility. For a moment, nothing else existed. No heat wave, no rivalry, no customers. Just us, standing on the sidewalk, the scent of salt and sugar surrounding us. And then, as if pulled by the same magnetic force, he leaned closer. I caught my breath, heart hammering, knowing that everything, the rivalry, the collaboration, the sparks, had led to this moment. The summer wasn't just about ice cream anymore. It was about the heat, the laughter, the teasing, and the dangerous sweet pull between us that neither of us wanted to resist. Do you think they'll finally kiss and admit their feelings, or will one of them hesitate at the last second? The final weekend of summer arrived like a blazing crescendo. Miami streets shimmered under the relentless sun, tourists crowded the sidewalks, and our ice cream booth had a line that twisted around the block. Somehow, the rivalry that had begun months ago had transformed into laughter, sparks, and something undeniably tender. I was busy drizzling caramel over coconut lime cones when he leaned close, whispering, "Ready for our grand finale?" His warm breath brushed my ear, sending shivers down my spine. "I think so," I murmured, pretending to focus on the cones but feeling every inch of him nearby. We had planned something ambitious, a mega sundae, layers of every flavor we'd perfected, topped with sauces, sprinkles, and a flourish of whipped cream. It was chaotic, messy, perfect. And working side by side, our hands kept brushing, our shoulders bumped, and our laughter rang above the hum of the summer crowd. As we assembled the last giant sundae, he paused, holding my hand just a second longer than necessary. "You know," he said softly, "we make a pretty good team." I smiled, heart hammering. The best team. My voice caught more than I expected. Better than any rivalry could ever be. The crowd cheered as we unveiled the sundae. Cameras flashed, kids squealed, adults clapped, but all I could focus on was him, the mischievous glint in his eyes, the curve of his smile, the warmth that seemed to radiate from his very being. "Wait," he said suddenly, stepping closer. "I have to admit something before summer ends." I tilted my head, curious and nervous. "Oh?" He took my hands in his, the chaos of the festival fading around us. "I didn't just enjoy working together. I didn't just enjoy the flavors, the ice cream, or the ridiculous heat wave. I've enjoyed you. Every laugh, every touch, every teasing glance. I don't want this summer to end without telling you." My chest tightened, and a smile spread across my face. "You idiot," I whispered. I felt the same way. He laughed, relief and delight in his eyes, and then leaned closer. The crowd, the festival, the sun, it all faded as we kissed. Soft, sweet, electric, like the perfect swirl of our ice cream creations. The world seemed to melt around us, leaving just the two of us in the warmth of summer. When we finally pulled back, we laughed breathlessly, foreheads touching. "So," he said, grinning, "what now? Another summer rivalry?" I shook my head, smiling. "No, something better, something sweeter. Maybe a summer romance that lasts all year." The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of gold and coral. The crowd cheered for our final sundae, unaware that the real celebration was happening right there between us. Rivalry turned teamwork, sparks turned romance, chaos turned unforgettable memory. And in that moment, standing side by side, sticky hands entwined, hearts racing, I realized that summer had given us more than ice cream. It had given us each other. And that was sweeter than anything we could ever serve. Do you think their summer romance will last? Or will the end of the heat wave challenge them?